Hello and welcome to my counter. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel typically sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now I am at the counter today because it is a little dreary outside. It's starting to rain a little bit. We're supposed to be getting thunderstorms. Of course, when I go to record a tag, that's when it happens. So yes, this is a No Tag Tuesday video, not a recipe, as I'm sure you knew already from the thumbnail and the description. So these questions this week come from Jay over at Average Jay. And he chose, because it is Labor Day, actually today is Labor Day, this will go up the day after. So he decided to do some labor related questions. So that's what we have today. So this is the labor edition. So thank you, Jay. And I don't know if Michelle helped you with any of these questions, but thank you, Michelle, also, just in case. Number one, what is the best job you have ever had? I'd have to say teaching, which was the last job I had before I had to retire from my disability. It was very rewarding just to see the confidence build as they got something, seeing kids who might not be as invested at first, finding a way to get them invested. All of that really was very impactful on me. I remember I had one student who really didn't want to be in school and was often slacking in the work or what have you. And because I kept trying to come up with innovative ways of engaging the students, when that class was over, he actually wrote me a card saying how much he liked being in my class and that he actually had started getting more engaged than he had been previously. So that kind of thing really was rewarding. So that had to be the best job I've ever had. And number two, what is the worst job you have ever had? I haven't really had jobs that I hated. I think the one that I can think of, and I honestly really didn't have the job, I guess. I'd gotten hired when I was living in New York. I'd gotten hired to sell on the street I believe they were pillows of some kind, like a massaging pillow or something weird like that. And I went to the orientation. I'd gotten hired. I went to the orientation. There were maybe like 25, 30 people there. And I'm socially awkward. So when there are a lot of people I don't know, I get a little anxious. My social anxiety really kicks in. But it was okay at first because we're all sitting there listening to what we're going to be doing as we work. Then it got weird and they decided to do team building exercises, even though we were going to be working alone. I don't know what the point of that was, but they got all these activities going, and one of them was where you would stand behind somebody else and start massaging their shoulders. Then you would turn and do the same and I was just like, once we had a break, I was gone. I was out of there. There was no way. I really needed to get a job, and I did eventually get a job as a messenger, which I loved. Wandering all over New York City, that was a lot of fun. But once they got into that weird woo-woo stuff, in my head woo-woo, no thanks. I was out. As soon as we had a break, I was gone. So even though I didn't really have, I had the job, I just didn't keep the job past the orientation. So That's the worst one I can think of. 3, what is the most difficult schedule you have ever worked? I'm not a morning person, so teaching was a little difficult for me, having to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to get prepared. But worse than that was when I was a teenager. I was probably 13, 14. I had a paper route for the Hartford Courant. I was in Connecticut at the time. And I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to get the papers, deliver them. That was definitely the worst. And then I had to go to school on top of it. So that I'd have to say is the worst schedule. Typically, I don't really mind, whatever schedule I'm on, but getting up that early, not really my thing. Number 4, what is the best schedule you have ever worked? I think in going over these with Paul, I was thinking, because I'm not a morning person, that when I worked at Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut, I worked at one point second shift, and I'd go in at like 5 and get out around 2 a.m. So I really enjoyed that schedule just because, again, not a morning person. So I didn't have to worry about getting up too early. I'd get home, I'd fool around on the computer a little bit while I let myself wind down, go to sleep, get up when I felt like getting up in the morning. I was able to get stuff done at like work hours. So I really liked that schedule. Number 5, who is the best or worst manager or supervisor you have ever had? And I had some great supervisors at the casino, but the ones that come to mind, both the best and the worst, are both when I worked for Stop and Shop supermarkets. And one of them was the best from here where I work in Massachusetts, and one was the worst when I used to work for them in Connecticut, because I've worked for Stop and Shop off and on throughout many, many years. I started when I graduated high school. I left for a while when I was in New York. I came back, and that was a job I knew, so I was able to get back in there. When I moved to Massachusetts, I was able to get back into there because I had worked for them before. And the best manager that I had, his name was Rick, and if he's watching, hey Rick, he was very supportive, very encouraging, very helpful, very nice. I worked at the service desk a lot of the times, the customer service desk, and we would get some people. I often wondered what I could have done in a past life that made this my job. But those customers weren't consistent. But there were some tough ones. And one of them, this woman came up and she was asking about something or other. And I kept trying to help, and she'd be like, "Are you a manager?" And I was like, "No, but if I can, well, could you get a manager?" So I finally got the manager. He came down. He was with me behind the service desk talking to the woman. And she asked him a question that he didn't know because it was something that someone more on the floor would know. So I tried to answer, and she said, "I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to him." She was extremely rude. So I said, "You don't have to be such a B word." And she flipped out on me. My manager kind of kicked me like, "Hey, watch it." And she, of course, went into a tirade and said, "I'm going to write to the corporate office," which she did. And he came to my defense, and he said how she was like trying to tear me down, really coming at me for no reason. So he supported me against any backlash that I might have gotten. So I really appreciated that. The worst that I had was my supervisor, not a store manager, but the manager of the front end, they call it, where the registers are. They called them a CDH at Stop and Shop. It's cash department head. And I was, at that point, I'd become an ACDH, an assistant cash department head. So I would be like his backup during the period that I was there. There were a couple of us. I liked to keep busy. I didn't want to be standing around, so I would go and I'd sweep or clean or whatever while there was downtime. And he would come at me for doing stuff. Don't you have people who can do that for you? You shouldn't be doing that. So then I would try to get people. Usually I was doing these things while the cashiers and baggers were all busy. But he didn't want me doing that. But then if I was standing there doing nothing, because I have other people who can do that, he would come down on me for that. So it was just like you couldn't win with this guy. I think his name began with an A. I think it was Andy, but I actually don't even remember. I don't care to remember. But those were the best and worst, two polar opposites for the same company. Number 6, what is the most jobs you have ever worked at the same time? I've only ever worked 2 at a time. There was a time when I was working at Stop and Shop in Connecticut. And I was also working nights at the Whole Donut, a donut shop. I love that job. It was a lot of fun, kind of relaxing, kind of hanging out with my friends because I got a group of friends who were regulars there. And then when I moved here to Massachusetts, I was able to get right back into Stop and Shop. So I was working there, but then I also got a job in the school system at that time working as a teacher's aide, which is what inspired me to go on to get my teaching certificate and yada yada. But I've only ever worked 2 jobs at a time. I've never done more than that. Number 7, have you ever worked in a union and how did you like it? I did. Stop and Shop had a union, and also there's a teachers union. I liked it fine. The one issue I had at Stop and Shop was it seemed, and they would be there if you had any trouble, they would be there to support you and whatnot. But it kind of felt like they would come in once in a while and hand out pens or pins with their little logo on it. So I'd be like, am I just paying these weekly fees so that you'd come in and bring me a pen on occasion? But I guess that's because I never really needed to use them. If I did, maybe I'd have a totally different feeling about it. Because they did, work contracts and things like that. So I don't have a problem with working in a union environment as long as they're actually doing what they say they're going to do. I'm all for it. If they're just there taking your money and not really helping out, then that's a totally different story. But I haven't had any trouble with working in a union. Okay, number 8, and we skipped this one when Paul and I went over these last night because he was asking me the questions and we got into these long discussions and he overlooked this one. Number 8, did you do chores as a kid and were you paid allowance? It wasn't like there were chores and a schedule and you had a weekly job kind of thing. And I never really got an allowance. So I'd have to say no. I did do things around the house when my mother would ask, but it wasn't like a set thing like, oh, you're going to be doing dishes, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that, or this day you do this. It wasn't anything like that. It was just when my mother asked for something, we'd do it, and we never really got like a set allowance. Number 9, what is your dream job if you qualified for anything? And I know that you are all going to be shocked when I say my dream job is to be a writer. To which Paul responded, well, if that's your dream job, why aren't you doing it? Because I procrastinate all the time. I find ways of not sitting at the computer. I have a book that I'm in the middle of editing and have been for years. because I just can't bring myself to go back to it. Partly, I think it's because my ADD, when I get in the middle of something, it gets all like turmoil in my head. So trying to unravel that is sometimes a little difficult. But also, there's also a fear of, what if I write this, spend all this time, and then I send it out thinking this is so good, and people who have read snippets of it are always pushing me to continue with it and to go on with it. But what if I submit it and people are like, what do you think you're doing? It's like those people who go on American Idol who seriously think they can sing and cannot. It's kind of like that's in my head. What if I do this, the one thing I've always dreamed of doing, and I put myself out there and then I found out I can't do it, or nobody believes that what I'm offering is worth anything. So that kind of internal conflict is keeping me from doing it. But it'd honestly be better to know once and for all, put it out there, whatever happens, happens, and then to just sit here and not do it at all. Then you're never gonna succeed if you never try. Isn't that the saying? So I really have to start doing what my friend Jennifer Lynn, she says she doesn't worry about her motivation in doing it. She just does the discipline of doing it. She doesn't try to get motivated. She just builds the discipline and does what she has to do. That's what I need to do as far as my writing goes. And number 10, how many places have you worked on the books in your life? Now, when I heard this question, I was wondering if Jay is working secretly for the IRS, trying to find out who's been working under the table. How many places have you worked on the books in your life? I mean, are you thinking that we're all sneaky tax evaders, Jay? I don't know. But I was trying to calculate how many jobs I've had. I'm not going to count like within a company if I've shifted, like, because I was a bagger at Stop and Shop, then a cashier, then an ACDH, then a customer service desk. So I'm not going to go by different jobs in the place because it just says how many places have you worked on the books. So I think it might be maybe 15 to 20. I don't know a specific number. I know I was counting and I got up to about 10 and I hadn't fully finished. And again, some of them were secondary jobs, some of them were early jobs. So I'm going to go about 15 or 20. And yes, Jay, they were all on the books, nothing under the table. Unless you mean where I was working on the books, like doing the accounting work or like the bank work at the casino, which I used to do. Now, I'm assuming you're not talking about that. That's a little too specific. Yeah, I'm going to say that he means legal jobs, not under the table jobs. So that is it for Jay's Labor Day questions. So I hope that you enjoyed this tag, and if you did, I'd appreciate you doing the usual, like, share, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And also, if you're looking for any of my recipes, you can find them down in the description box. The link to my blog is there. There's also ways to contact me, and if anyone has my snail mail address, I no longer have that box because I wasn't getting any mail there, really. So it wasn't advantageous for me on a fixed income to be spending the money on a box. So I no longer have the snail mail address, but there are other ways to contact me. There's also links to my Amazon storefront, my Built Bar rewards, my Fetch rewards, and my social media is down there, Instagram and the 2 Facebook groups. So go check out the description box and find out any sort of information that I might have down there for you. So I'm not sure who's doing this next. I'm not even sure if we're back to each week now or every other week still. I did not look at the schedule. I think we're still doing every other week until October. And the beginning of October is going to be my week. So I know that's coming up. But anyways, you'll hit the notification bell and you'll know whenever any of these comes up. So until next time, bye.